Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I have my phone here today because this is going to be a long one. I have a lot of thoughts, and they're not only about the Toronto subway. They're really about when you're extending a subway to a major destination in any city, and when you're trying to form a subway network. And I hope these thoughts are helpful when you're thinking about your local subway network, or your tram network, or perhaps even your bus network, but mainly your subway network. I like Toronto's current subway plans, as I've said in many videos. But the current plans and the plans that will be built have a flaw, and that flaw is bigger than even the flaw of not elevating these projects far more. Suburban extensions likely shouldn't be built deep underground. Now, tunnels won't hurt us in the long term, but this mistake with the Scarborough Subway Extension will hurt us in the long term, and that's why I'm talking about it in today's video. Today's topic is sort of about why you shouldn't extend a subway line close to a major destination. If you're going to be near a major destination, just go all the way. But you also may not want to go past a major destination too much for reasons I'm going to discuss in this video. Now, the Scarborough Subway Extension doesn't just go to Scarborough Town Centre. There should be a map on screen so you get a sense of what I'm talking about. Scarborough Town Centre is meant to be a new sort of urban core for the east end of Toronto. A town center, as it were, centered around a major mall, as we do in North America. To be fair, it's been designated as a town center for a really long time, and it still isn't truly a town center, but given the rapid development of the city of Toronto, I think in the future we may truly begin to see it becoming a major urban center for the greater Toronto region. Now, the Scarborough Subway Extension doesn't just go to Scarborough Town Centre, it actually goes beyond it to the north up to Sheppard and McCowan. McCowan being the main north-south street that the Scarborough Subway Extension will follow. Now, there are goods and bads to extending beyond Scarborough Town Centre. The bad is kind of obvious. It costs more and, well, your subway is extended to a place where the benefit-cost ratio is not as high. Not all that many people want to take a subway to or from the Canadian Tire parking lot at Sheppard and McCowan. Now, to be fair, this may not be a Canadian Tire parking lot by the time the line opens, but you get the point. It's not an established destination for the entire region, which usually is what warrants a subway station, or a major transfer point, for that matter. But to be fair, there is a good rationale to extending a subway beyond a major center like this. If you were to stop the subway construction at Scarborough Town Centre, not only would that mean that you would have to extract tunnel boring machines, which are large underground drilling machines, from the ground at Scarborough Town Centre, which is becoming a fairly dense area with a lot of high-rises around, lots of infrastructure, traffic, and the like, but you'd also have to reinsert tunneling machines and equipment and rip all the ground up again when you wanted to extend the line to the north, something that we will likely see in the future. Extending line further north kind of makes sense naturally, since that is the general direction the line will be heading after this extension anyways, and so the point is kind of, let's take it out of the dense area to a lower density area where doing some construction staging is easier. That's a difficult part of any major subway project. So it's not perfect, but it's also not deeply flawed. There is a rationale behind extending north of Scarborough Town Centre, but there is a big problem with it, and it has to do with the Sheppard line. The Sheppard line is every transit reporter in Toronto's favorite thing to dunk on. It's a short subway line that has unsurprisingly low ridership and essentially acts as a branch line of Line 1, Toronto's busiest subway line, connecting it to eastern North York. The issue with the Sheppard line is largely the fact that it doesn't connect to any destination so major as to kind of warrant its existence. It has some decent ridership for its length, to be fair, but the connection at Line 1 also makes it suffer, because even though the connection is relatively efficient, you just go down an escalator and walk over to the platform, it's still not super convenient because traveling only a few stops to then have to get off your train, wait for the next train, do a transfer, it's just not great. One-seat rides are convenient, and we seem to forget this far too often. Even in a system where vehicles are super frequent, one-seat rides are always going to be better and more comfortable for passengers, and this is something we shouldn't forget. Now, the big benefit of extending the Scarborough Subway Extension north up to McCowan and Sheppard is that it should make a proposed future connection of the Sheppard line over to the east, a well-known proposal made by late Mayor Doug Ford, the current Premier of Ontario's brother, connecting the Sheppard line across to the Scarborough Subway Extension. The issue is with the transfer. It's bad, bad, bad. Now this is sort of ironic because one of the main benefits of the Scarborough Subway Extension is removing a painfully awkward transfer at Kennedy Station between Line 2 and the SRT. And the Sheppard line, as I mentioned, has a major flaw in it in that it has a transfer between it and Line 1 at Sheppard Yonge. And so this line sort of takes one problem and pushes it up to the north end of the line. What does this all mean? Well, passengers traveling from Scarborough Town Centre up to North York Centre or any other destination along the current or future Sheppard line will need to transfer after just one stop, and vice versa. It's painfully inconvenient, especially if people want to make shorter trips, say from Scarborough Town Centre area to Fairview Mall at Don Mills Station or to Leslie Station, for example. This transfer is sort of a linear transfer, if you will. A linear transfer is where you have to transfer trains or from train to bus when traveling in the same direction. Now, transferring from train to bus while traveling in the same direction is mostly okay because, hey, you don't have a subway line going all the way to X location, so you've got to get on the bus. But when you have two subway lines connected up, and a lot of trips would generally be traveling in the same direction, it just makes sense to have them connected so that the majority of riders can have a one-seat ride and continue riding. That's one of the major issues with the Scarborough RT, or the SRT. People traveling kind of east-northeast into the center of Scarborough have to change trains just to continue traveling east-northeast into the center of Scarborough. They're just riding on a different train. The same issue is going to exist at Sheppard and McCowan, where people traveling from places in Scarborough to places in North York, something which would probably happen a lot more if we had a subway line that made this connection, will have to make a painful transfer. And I say painful transfer because all transfers are painful. There's nothing good about a transfer. Even the most simple transfer across the platform that exists in some systems around the world still isn't great because you can miss the transfer, you have to get out of your seat, you might lose your seat, you might forget something on the train. Transfers are just not great. Any level of transfer is not ideal, especially when you don't need to have one. You might be saying, hey, why don't we just sort of extend the Scarborough Subway up and then back down to Sheppard so that we can make the connection? Well, I guess that's an option, but do you really expect us to be making such a circuitous route to connect up to the Sheppard Subway in the future? It's going to lead to a lot more disruption, a lot more cost, and it's frankly just an inefficient way to design a subway connection. If you have lines set up to meet at a 90-degree angle perpendicular to one another, you might as well extend both in the same direction in the future, which is sort of the future we're setting ourselves up with. Unfortunately though, that decision doesn't make a ton of sense. We don't need more radial transit lines in Toronto, we need more circumferential lines. If you want to continue north, well, you'd probably take the Stouffville GO line. And if you want to continue east, well, you'd probably take the Lakeshore East GO line. So continuing lines north and east doesn't make a ton of sense. It really makes sense to have them connected, so again, people from one town center can get to the other relatively easily. The point being that right now, everyone sort of has to transfer through downtown Toronto to get between different areas of the city. Now, the Eglinton Crosstown will make things a little bit better by allowing people to transfer via Midtown, but the truth is that there are a lot of people in Scarborough and a lot of people in North York and a lot of major destinations in both of these places, and allowing people to travel directly between them on rapid transit is a good goal. So what's the answer then? Well, I'd suggest the old and parking-filled broadcasting campus located to the northwest of the Highway 401 and McCowan interchange be turned into the final station of the Scarborough Subway Extension. It's perfect for a number of reasons. First of all, you've got old buildings and a lot of parking, so buying it up and replacing it with some transit-oriented development, a big bus terminal. We could have this be Highway 401 station, much like Highway 407 station, serving Highway 401 GO buses and some TTC buses, but also because it leaves you lots of space to do construction staging, but also to have room in the future to do more construction staging if you're extending the line to the northwest up to Sheppard. And since this station would be south of Sheppard, it's much more natural to connect the line straight onto the Sheppard corridor where it can continue on to Don Mills. This also has the benefit of slightly reducing the tunneling required from Scarborough Town Centre by making a slight turn. And if we're being honest, the terminal location is not all that much worse than the location at Sheppard and McCowan. The Sheppard bus is busy, but having a station at a major highway where there's a lot of intercity bus travel is also a nice thing to have. Now, to be fair, if we're doing this, I think we should also make some changes at Scarborough Town Centre. There are a ton of parking lots at Scarborough Town Centre, and since I think the subway station there should be a little larger than average, I think that utilizing those parking lots to create a large cut and cover station makes a lot of sense. Most stations are built cut and cover, but this one would be larger than most, and so it would be even more valuable to do a shallow cut and cover station here. The reason I'm saying it would be larger than most is because I would suggest having 3 or maybe even 4 platforms. Now, in a 3-platform situation, what you would likely see is some level of trains eventually through running. Basically, trains traveling from Bloor would travel up north, and then they would end up traveling west down Sheppard. This seems a little odd and has the disadvantage of requiring major work at all of the Sheppard line stations to take the currently unused room on the platforms for 5 and 6 car trains and properly fitting it out to operate full 6 car trains as you would see on the Bloor Danforth line. There's also the issue of the mismatch where Sheppard line doesn't need all of the service of line 2, and it might create some operational inefficiencies to have the lines interlined given how long they are, as well as the fact that people probably aren't going to be riding their way around this gigantic U. Basically, you're creating Line 1 Yonge University in Toronto, another U-shaped line, but this time sort of horizontal. U-shaped lines don't make a ton of sense, but you do want to have the connectivity so that trains from Sheppard can go to Scarborough Town Centre. So adding those extra platforms, whether it be 3 platforms or 4 platforms, gives you that flexibility. Now, if you use 3 platforms, things become a little dicier. You might have to through run a bit more to be able to have maximum capacity, and your Sheppard frequency might be a bit limited. 4 platforms is more expensive, but it gives you flexibility, and all in all, you could have track connections to make everything more efficient. All of this is good for flexibility, but at the end of the day, all of it doesn't matter because plans have already been finalized. The Scarborough Subway Extension has been finalized and tunneling will start soon. It's unfortunate that we're going to have to deal with a bad transfer, and we may have to end up fixing it in the future. But all of this goes to show how important it is to design your transfers and your subway extensions with the consideration of other future subway extensions and your entire network so that you plan accordingly. This allows you to better integrate, create better transfers in the future, and not end up with the kind of mess we have at Sheppard Yonge. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.